order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Jennings.
Here.
Commissioner Angel.
Here.
Commissioner Crawford.
Here.
Commissioner Householder.
Here.
Commissioner Shirley.
Here.
Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This is the point of in time of our meeting where we have a citizens forum that allows the citizens of Salina, Kansas to come forward and state their name, their address, and comment or concerns. And they would be on items that are not on today's agenda. So if you have anything you want to bring before the commission, it's not on the agenda, please come forward, state your name and your address.
Oh, hi. Dennis Benoit, 1773 20th Road outside Canopolis. I'm just here to remind everybody that Salina Cares will be having a meeting 7:30 Prescott Room over in the Salina Public Library. I'd like to invite anybody that would like to find out some facts about the fluoridation. Please come. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens to bring something forward today? Seeing none, we have no awards and proclamations today, so we'll move on to public hearings and items scheduled for a certain time.
Item 5.1, public hearing regarding the Kansas Public Water Supply Loan Fund to finance improvements in the city water supply and distribution system. Sub-item 5.1A, resolution number 126911.
Ms. Tasker.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. The city has made a preliminary application to the Kansas Department of Health and Environment for a loan through the Kansas Public Water Supply Loan Fund for improvements to the city of Salina water system. Thank you. I'll try to be taller.
Let me know how that works out.
I'll let you know. KDHE requires a public hearing to be conducted to present the information regarding the nature of the scope of the improvements, the source of the revenues, pledge to secure the loan, and environmental issues that are associated with the project. Today, we have representatives from HDR Engineering Incorporated here to present the specific scope of the project, which I'll introduce them after I'm done speaking. The costs for the proposed improvements are included in our current 2012 to 2017 rate study at the conventional rate of 4%. And each year we evaluate those rates to ensure that they're adequate to meet our needs. Today, staff has identified two options for the City Commission for consideration. First is to adopt resolution number 126911, authorizing the completion of an application to the Kansas Department of Health and Environment regarding a loan from the Kansas Public Water Supply Loan Fund. The second option is not to adopt the resolution and give staff further direction. Staff recommends option one. At this time, I would like to introduce our guests from HDR, Don Lindeman, and also Lori Hill, the project engineer on the project, and I'll let them get into the real specifics of the project.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. Thank you, Martha. As Martha indicated, we're here regarding funding for the Kansas Water Supply Loan Fund. Let's see if I got the clicker right here. Which way do I point it? This way? Okay, thank you. Taking a look at the system overview, which is part of the loan application itself, we're looking at the current population in Salina is over 47,000, and the U.S. Census Bureau has indicated that the median household income is about 42,000 per household. We're really talking about the water supply and treatment here that we're taking a look at, and you have two raw water supply sources That's 15 wells that come from the aquifer associated with the Smoky Hill River alluvium. And you also have a Smoky Hill River direct intake off of the river that supplies water to your water treatment plant. The wells go preliminary through air strippers to strip the volatile organics out of the water before it goes into the main treatment plant, where it combines with the surface water that is then goes through the plant to get its finished water and then ultimately pumped out into the distribution system. Back in 2006, you had a historic drought event, which was really the impetus for a raw water supply study that was completed in 2010. This study looked at really increasing the drought supply capacity for the city of Salina, and we identified a 50-year planning period. And in that 50-year planning period, we looked at requirements for getting additional capacity needs for drought of 9 million gallons by the year 2030, and an additional 2.7 over the 9 million gallons by the year 2060. We looked at a number of different supply alternatives for that, but ultimately the phases we selected for phase 1 and phase 2 of that were downtown wellfield improvements, and then secondly, phase 2, the south wellfield improvements. In addition, the city of Salina had contracted to have a water distribution system model project conducted when phase 1 and phase 2 were completed in 2011. This looked at a 20-year planning period, and one of the major recommendations from that was to replace approximately $4 million worth of distribution system piping per year. These replacements would address things like pressures and available fire flow to the city, as well as replacing old pipe in the system that is likely the cause for color as well as taste and odor concerns with the water in the distribution system. The downtown wellfield scope looks at improving the wellfield system and increasing its capacity by 3 million gallons per day. We'll be doing this by redrilling 4 of the existing wells. As you can see, the wells were constructed. Well, you can see that if I hit the clicker here. Apologize. The wells were constructed from 1929 to 1989. In addition, we're going to replace those wells, and with the new wells being constructed, the old wells have decreased their capacity. You're going to gain more capacity by putting in new wells. In addition, we'll also be putting in a parallel raw water line to the water treatment plant, and this will increase the capacity going to the plant as well as provide a redundant line in case something should happen to the existing one. As part of all this, because we're replacing the wells and we're increasing the capacity of the well field to the plant, we also have to increase the capacity of the air strippers at the plant for the well fields as well, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And I'll even click the pointer this time. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, that indicates the air stripper improvements at the water treatment plant. In the upper right-hand corner, that's pointing out in the black line the approximately 5,000 feet of raw water supply line that will be constructed. And then the other 4 boxes are indicating the wells where we're going to be re-drilling new wells. For the air stripper improvements specifically, these are treating just the groundwater, not the surface water. And these were installed in 1998, and the current capacity is 10 million gallons per day, 5 each for each of the 2 towers that are shown in the picture. We're proposing to increase that capacity to 15 million gallons per day, increasing the individual towers to 7.5 million gallons per day. As part of all this, we'll need to replace the pumps that pump the water to the towers, as well as the blowers that put the air through the towers to strip the volatiles, and the piping to do that as well. This will help you better match your airflow and your pumping capacity, and therefore help reduce some of your electrical costs through your normal operations. For water distribution, the capital improvement plan there, as I mentioned, called for $4 million of pipe per year to be replaced. And this is done under a phased approach here. And I'll just click to the next slide because this has a little bit of summary. We had basically 6 phases. Please, the last one in 2013 is phase 6, not phase 5 as is shown. And the first 2 phases are complete with over 4.5 miles of pipeline. And in 2012, we're proposing about 8 miles of pipeline for phases 3, 4, and 5. And 2013, another 8 miles of pipeline, which should be for phase 6 on this drawing. This is a distribution system capital improvement plan. The different colors that are represented up here between the brown, the purple, as well as the dark blue are phases 3, 4, and 5. And the light green that you can see up there as well is phase 6. of the improvements for 2013. As part of what KDHE also requires is to take a look at the environmental considerations for the project when we'll be constructing the raw water lines as well as the water distribution system improvements. You're really going to be looking at some of your primary concerns of dust, noise during construction, and erosion control as you're doing the construction. The permitting agencies also take a look at environmental considerations as far as plant species or anything in the water like that too, and that all has to be permitted as part of it. For the air strippers themselves, this will all be constructed confined within the building on the water treatment plant site, so there won't be anything outside that'll be going on that. KDHE requires that we submit environmental clearances as part of the Kansas Raw Water Supply Loan Fund. We request environmental clearances, and we did that with 12 agencies. We've shown here 5 responses, and that was the number of responses we had received at the time of putting together this presentation. We've received an additional 2 responses, and all of those show no concern for what we're doing here with regard to the projects. Trying to get into a little bit of the meat of the matter, the capital costs for the proposed loan amount. For the well field and treatment, which includes the strippers, we're looking at a little over $4 million. For the distribution system, we're looking at $4 million for 2012. Associated with that is the engineering work that's been done, as well as a contingency, because when you're working out in the streets and building these new pipelines and things like that, there's underground items you can't anticipate. So you put a contingency in with the loan to make sure you have the money to be able to meet those needs as they come up. And then also a loan origination fee to get you to a total of about $9.3 million that we're looking at for the loan itself. The big bang comes here when you take a look at conventional financing. With a $9.3 million loan, you're looking at a conventional financing rate of approximately 4%. And over the life of a 20-year loan, you're looking at approximately $4.6 million in the cost of interest for that $9 million. If you look at a low-interest loan through KDHE, you're looking at an interest rate of approximately 2.6%. And over the life of a 20-year loan, you're now looking at the interest over the life of that loan of only about $2.6 million. So no surprise there. You're looking at saving roughly $2 million over 20 years. Your annual savings would be about $100,000 a year as part of your budget that could be then used for other things or reduced. These costs of these improvements, as Martha indicated earlier, are included in your current water rates up to 2017 in your rate projections. And with that, be happy to answer any questions, have any discussion. Thank you.
Any commissioner have either questions of either presenter, Ms. Tasker? At this point in time, I'd open it up for any public discussion from anybody that's here to speak out on the matter. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for further discussion and potential action.
Mayor, I move that we adopt Resolution 12-6911.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution number 12-6911. On first reading, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Item 5.2, public hearing and report on petition number 4345, requesting vacation of the south 14 feet of the north 48 feet of Lot 3, Block 5 of the Country Oaks Estates Edition. Sub-item 5.2A, first reading ordinance number 1010641.
Mr. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This item was before you on June 4th, and the public hearing was continued to today's date. And you asked staff to do 2 things. One was to look at alternatives to the 14-foot dimension that was being requested by the petitioner in terms of the request for vacation. And the other thing you asked us to do was look at the ability to accommodate a storage building or workshop in the rear yard area and determine how much land area was needed to accommodate that. So if we start with the big picture here, the location that we're discussing is between I-135 and Schilling Elementary School, south of Schilling Road. As we reported to you last time, as a condition of subdivision plat approval for Country Oak Estates, the developers were required to provide pedestrian access and a bridge over Dry Creek to Schilling Elementary School. And the right-of-way we're discussing here today is a part of that strip of land that provides connectivity from Marcella Drive to Schilling Elementary School. Petition that was filed by the Van Meters requested that the city vacate 14 feet of the 48-foot right-of-way that exists, and if you put it to scale here, the 14-foot area comprises that yellow band right there, with about 10 feet between there and the sidewalk, and then you've got the property on the other side of the sidewalk, which also has a storm sewer underneath it. So the Public Works staff re-examined that 48-foot wide strip. They determined that an access corridor at least 15 feet wide would be needed to maintain the ability to get a vehicle south of the sidewalk and over to the bridge and not do damage to that sidewalk. And so at 14 feet being requested, that would not allow for that to occur, so there would be a need for a reduction in the amount of right-of-way. The other thing we did, and I think, Dustin, you've got the 3 exhibits that we have here. First thing we did was, this is a 2-scale survey of the lot there on Marcella Drive, and in your packet there you've got a analysis of the site plan. This is what a rear yard accessory building would look like, entirely contained on the existing property. And under this configuration, there would be no zoning setbacks or lot coverage or anything needed to accommodate that. The Exhibit B that you have shows what it would look like also on the existing lot if it were tucked over in the south corner. And then the third drawing shows that if the 14-foot vacation request were approved, this shows where a building could be located with the 14-foot vacation of right-of-way. The conclusion that staff reached is that it is not essential to have any additional right-of-way added to this lot in order to make the rear yard buildable. So it's not a but-for situation. You can accommodate a storage building there without the additional property. So what we identified for you as alternatives is if you are receptive to vacating the entire 14 feet as petitioned for, the ordinance that's attached to your report is based on the petition, which is got the 14-foot dimension in it. You could choose to vacate a lesser amount than the 14-foot requested by the petitioner. We identified 8 feet in the report. It could be reduced to 7 or 6 or whatever you think is appropriate, but Public Works has indicated they need it to retain at least 15 feet south of the sidewalk to make it accessible. Your third alternative, of course, is to deny the petition and retain the existing right-of-way the way it is. But if there was a desire to approve a lesser vacation than the ordinance that's before you today, the dimensions in it would need to be modified accordingly. But with that, I'd be happy to address any questions that you have. As I said, we walk through the site plan. We deal with property owners every week who are trying to build rear yard outbuildings, and we saw that with an 87 by 115 foot existing lot that you could build a building of that size without needing the right-of-way. So I'd be open to any questions.
Any questions of staff? Thank you,
I
Mr.
don't know,
Hammond.
Mr. Van Meter is here.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I was talking with Dean, and we can reduce it to 7 foot even. Our biggest concern is the building is going to take up almost all of the square footage needed. Well, you're not going to be able to build anything else. And in the future, we would like to add to our living room about 8 feet, or maybe 10, and it doesn't quite give us enough. That's the reason we was asking for a strip, and 14 foot wide. We was hoping to put the building over that way, but that's not going to happen, I don't believe, because you're needing the right of way wider. So we was needing a little extra square feet for future plans. And the building is probably going to go to the south end rather than north. So if we could have even 6 feet, be fine. I got no problem with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there any public comment on this? Bring it back to the commission for some discussion and any potential action.
Dean, sorry. Go ahead, Barb.
I was going to make a motion, but if you have a question.
Dean, yeah, I was just wanting to make sure. So just really more for kind of public record. 14 foot south of the parking lot would be fine. You're saying that if they said that all they really need is that 14 feet to be still.
Yeah, what the petition for was to subtract 14 out of the 48, which would leave the city with 34 and him with 14. If this were reduced to whether he gained 6 or 7 feet, then the area south of the sidewalk would be increased from 10 feet to 17 or 18
And that would
feet.
still give enough room.
That would be enough room to get a vehicle south of the sidewalk. The most important thing is to not have to have any vehicle traffic driving over the sidewalk because it's going to get broken up.
Right. Do you, I mean, I know we're sort of asking you to put a crystal ball, but do you foresee anything beyond that 17 feet really ever needed? I mean, I'm all for the city maintaining property if we ever may have a future use, but if we really don't think we'll ever need more than that 14 to 17 feet, I couldn't see any reason to keep it, but it's not my day-to-day job to, I don't know what the future may hold there.
The 48 feet was not, I'll say it wasn't pre-planned. It's how it laid out in there when the lots were sold, and basically we said you're going to leave a corridor between Marcella and the school, and the corridor they left was 48 feet wide.
Okay.
And so we retained that corridor and we put a sidewalk in it, and it wasn't that we pre-planned it to be 48 feet wide. That's the way it fell in terms of how they preserve the corridor.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion or?
Now, I think I'm going to make the motion to move, we go with option 2, that we could choose to vacate a lesser amount of the right-of-way than requested by the petitioner, so that we can allow for continued vehicular access to the bridge.
What you need to put in.
I don't know how.
Foot 6.
Is it 6 feet or 8 feet?
Did you say 6 would work for you, sir?
6 would be fine.
And that still allows us the amount?
Okay, so for the 6 feet.
And I'd second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the request with the modification of allowing for 6 feet versus a requested 14 foot. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
I'll just report back that we will work with the city clerk, so when this comes back on second reading, it will reflect 6 feet and not 14.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 5.3, public hearing and report on petition number 4347, requesting vacation of the Park Street right-of-way from the west line of the North Chicago Street right-of-way to the west line of Lot 9, Block 14, Mdale Addition. Sub-item 5.3A, first reading ordinance number 12, 10,645.
Mr. Bingston.
I'm sorry, Mayor and Commissioners, and I'm looking to Mr. Andrew to see if his thought would be the same, that I take it, based on your suggestion, that we were looking to today's proceeding as first reading on the ordinance. And while the motion appropriately spoke to the distance, I suppose if we are actually considering the ordinance on first reading, we should do so specifically.
Yes, the appropriate thing would be to approve the ordinance on first reading with the dimension modified to 6 feet from 14, which we would correct accordingly.
So if the commission is so inclined, I would think a motion to actually approve the ordinance as modified on first reading would be in order. And I'm sorry I didn't jump ahead of Luann on the item.
Sorry.
Okay, so re-motion it? Okay, I move. Go.
Nope, you're good. Yep.
All right. I move we approve option number 2 on first reading as modified.
Second. Is that correct?
I do think it'd be best to refer specifically to the ordinance by number. If you would.
Okay. Ordinance number 12-10641 on first reading as modified.
Second.
Very good.
We have a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 12-10641 on first reading with the modifications as noted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Now we move on to item 5 point, where are we at now? 5.3 that was just previously read by the city clerk. Mr. Andrew.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is also a public hearing on a street vacation request and also consideration of a vacation ordinance on first reading, if that should be your desire today. The property that we're talking about is, you see on the screen there, is Park Street, which is located west of Chicago Street and runs into the Broadway Viaduct. Originally, when this area was platted, Park Street went through and Broadway did not exist. But when Broadway Boulevard and the viaduct was constructed, it bisected this subdivision and cut Park Street off, turning it into a dead-end street. The petitioner in this case is Salina Concrete Products, and they've recently acquired all the property on both the north and south sides of Park Street west of Chicago Street. All of this property is zoned I-2 for light industrial development. And because they now own the property on both sides, they filed this petition to close Park Street to traffic and vacate it as a public street. And their reasoning provided was they don't feel that the city is doing an adequate job of maintaining the street, and they think that there is, with them owning both sides, that there's really no reason or business for other members of the traveling public to use that street west of Chicago Street. So their goal, if this were to be approved, would be to close and vacate the street, place a gate at the Chicago entrance, and incorporate it into their business campus. As you know, you cannot vacate a street or alley right-of-way over the objections of an abutting owner, but in this case, the Salina Concrete Products is the only abutting owner, so there's no other owners we need to notify or work with. So if you were to approve this, then the ownership of that 70-foot strip of right-of-way would revert back to the property owner on each side, in this case, Salina Concrete Products. We have contacted both our public utilities and our franchise utility providers. The public utility providers and the engineering division are opposed to the vacation of the right-of-way. We stated in there that the franchise utilities felt protected with a retention of a utility easement. That is Westar, Kansas Gas. His preference was retention of the right-of-way. And so, just looking at this, there's two primary issues. One is that should Park Street west of Chicago remain open to public traffic as a public street? Is there a need to keep this open as a public street for traffic? And if that's not the case, in any event, should the right-of-way still be retained to preserve and protect access to public and franchise utilities? So, as far as utilities go in this particular right-of-way, we have Westar, Kansas Gas, City Water, City Sewer, and City Storm Sewer. And Dustin, I don't know if you can go back to that aerial photo. And I guess this one doesn't have the utilities on it, but you do have it in your packet. The red that you have on the drawing in your packet indicates storm sewer. The blue is the water lines, and then the green there is public sanitary sewer lines. So the city engineering and utility departments both object to the right-of-way vacation request because they want to preserve right-of-way whenever and wherever possible. And it said the only franchise utility that volunteered that vacation of the street and retention of a utility easement would adequately protect their interests was Westar. So we have prepared an ordinance for your consideration, which is based on the petitioner's request. So you could approve the closure and vacation of Park Street, and effect of this would be the 70-foot strip of Park Street right-of-way would revert to the ownership and control of Salina Concrete Products, and to do so, you would approve the attached ordinance on first reading. If you want to continue this hearing to allow additional information or options to be provided by staff, that's an option. Or you could deny the petitioner's request, which would mean Park Street would remain open as is. We indicated that if you were inclined to approve the street vacation request, that the entire street right-of-way, all 70 feet, should be retained as a public utility easement, and that should be modified to say utility and drainage easement to accommodate the storm sewer. And then the petitioner, if successful, would need to work with the city engineer to come up with an appropriate traffic barrier or gate that would notify the public that that's no longer an open public street. But we do have Peter Browning from Salina Concrete Products here today, but before you hear from him, I'd stand for any questions.
Dean, I mean, I highly doubt it, but the city doesn't have any street lights or anything down there. I just thought maybe because it was a dead end at some point, may have installed something. I just want to...
I don't know, Dustin, we have to get the photograph out and see. I know we have power poles down the north side of Park Street, but I can't...
I saw those. I just didn't notice there were any lights. I just wanted to make sure, obviously, we wouldn't want to maintain that if we...
Mr. Browning could probably tell us much better.
Probably knows. Well, I would just add that if we did this and there was any, city lighting or anything else, obviously we would remove. Yeah, okay, I don't see anything there. I just wanted to make sure.
But that is a photograph of what it looks like
Okay.
looking west from the intersection of Chicago, and this is Park Street as it is today.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it wasn't a light down there we were paying for the next 20 years. So.
Is there any further questions of staff?
If not, like I said, Mr. Browning is here on behalf of Salina Concrete Products.
Yeah, Mayor, I have a quick question of Dean, if I may. Dean, you indicated that Public Works and utility staff really didn't want to do this just because of general desire to preserve right-of-way. I guess the question, I don't know, maybe it's for Mike, or you may be prepared to answer it. I know Martha's not with us right now. What would we possibly need to do with that as right-of-way that we can't do with it as easement?
The only difference is ownership, but in many cases, as long as we retain that as public utility easement, it retains all the rights of the utility holders to get access to it. That's why this is really a two-part question. One is there a reason to keep it open for traffic? And then the second question is a utility easement adequate to protect the utilities? And Westar says yes. And if the others would prefer to maintain it as right-of-way, I still believe the utility easement would protect their interests because it ensures access and ensures that nothing gets built over the utilities.
Okay. Mike, I'm presuming that there's some level of maintenance we provide, even if it may not be adequate for, obviously it's not a through traffic road, but if it was, it wouldn't be to that level. But I presume that occasionally, maybe once a year, twice a year, there's some maintenance that we currently are providing there.
We do try to, on our unimproved roads, provide some kind of road improvements with a motor grader for those types of things.
So I guess when you're looking at that, the one thing, if you give that up as right-of-way but retain easement, we no longer have the obligation to provide right-of-way maintenance. So that's not a huge cost, obviously, but it's a cost we wouldn't have any longer.
That's correct.
The time that we wouldn't need to spend there any longer. Are you aware of any other reasons that we might want to hold on to that as right-of-way? I think it's clear we need to hold on to it as easement when we have utilities.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything else that we would have to hold on to that for.
Okay, thank you.
Said, you might want to hear from Mr. Browning and his reasons for the petition.
Yes, Mr. Browning. Afternoon.
Afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and county commissioners, or city commissioners.
Whoever.
Commissioners, we'll just say that.
Denied.
All right. No, I think that Dean laid it out pretty well. As you can see, we kind of have basically a road to nowhere here. We've got ownership on both sides of the road, and our concern is we have somewhat of an attractive nuisance in that we've got industrial equipment, we've got material, things like that down there. We want to be able to close that property off so that someone doesn't wander down there in the middle of the night, hurt themselves, or something of that nature. The other thing that has happened several times is we've had vehicles parked down there along the sides of our buildings and haven't been able to locate the owner, and then the vehicle mysteriously disappears the next day or so. And so by being able to close that off, we just have the ability to know what's going on within the property and keep people safe. So, and we don't have any objections to utility easements. So. Understand that, and there's no plans for buildings or anything like that. It just it seems to be a wise move for the city and for our company. So.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Stack.
Just one point of clarification. This needs to maintain a drainage and utility easement. Just, I don't know if you already said that.
Yeah, drainage and utility. Okay.
He's doing his job.
Hey,
That's
just
good.
doing his
Thank
job.
you.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yes.
Do we have any other public comment or comment for us to consider at this point in time? Okay, I'd bring this back to the commission for discussion and potential action.
Mayor, I'd move that we adopt ordinance number 12-10645, vacating but maintaining our utility easement with the staff recommended additions here, the entire street, 1 and 2 on page 2 of our document.
Second.
So,
Want me to amend it? Mayor, I would move to amend the motion made by Commissioner Householder to approve the ordinance on first reading, but also retaining the entire street right-of-way as a public utility and drainage easement, And also request that the petitioner shall either install a gate or a standard traffic barrier meeting the criteria established by the city engineer at the east end of the vacated street right-of-way at a location approved by the city engineer.
Second.
Yeah. I thought that's what I was
There you go.
motioning, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Good job rewording it.
Yeah.
So we vote on the amendment to the original motion first. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, amendment carries. Now we'll vote on the original motion as amended. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We move to the consent agenda.
Item 6.1, approve the minutes of June 11, 2012.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda as read. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And we have no development business today, so we'll move into administration.
Item 8.1, second reading ordinance number 10,643, amending an amended preliminary final development plan for the Storage Mart PDD located at 2820 Foxborough Road.
This was brought to us and approved under first reading on July 11th. June 11th. We're not in July yet. And since that time, we've had no comments. Are there any comments at this point in time? Any public comment? Bring it to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we approve on second reading ordinance number 12-10-643, approving an amended preliminary final development plan for the Storage Mart PDD located at 2820 Foxborough Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve on second reading ordinance number 12-10-643. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Angel?
Aye.
Commissioner Crawford?
Aye.
Commissioner Householder?
Aye.
Commissioner Shirley?
Aye.
Mayor Jennings?
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Item 8.2, approve an agreement for design services related to the interconnecting and adjusting timings for traffic signals along 9th Street corridor.
Mr. Stack.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a project that we received a grant for from KDOT and approved a contract with KDOT or an agreement with KDOT in, I think it was April of this year, and then now we're to the design engineer selection for helping us, traffic engineer, to help us with this, trying to interconnect these signals along, 19 signals along 9th Street. We followed our professional services selection guidelines, section 4. Since this is an agreement for $50,000 or less, we have a group of consultants that have traffic engineering experience, and we solicited proposals from them for this. And H.W. Lochner was the unanimous decision of the group. They have a 35-year veteran traffic engineer that has worked with staff before and is very good with this, what we feel like what this is going to need. And Lochner has successfully given us a contract that we believe works for about $15,736. Basically doing an assessment of all the signal controllers, the cabinets, the intersections. City staff has currently been obtaining traffic counts for the intersections. We're going to look at travel times before and after the improvements, computer modeling to see how they coordinate, and then procurement and installation. There will need to be some new master controllers, some cable along South 9th Street that we already have conduit there. We just got to pull some cable. Some radio interconnect interfaces as well as some wireless type controllers. So we're going to try that on this corridor as well, and the parts that we can't pull cable to. And then Lochner will help us oversee the implementation and then prepare a report of their kind of the results of what we've done. So we feel like this will get us further down the road as our first interconnected system. It's something that we haven't had here before, and we hope to. This is hopefully the start of more of these. So I feel like Lochner's the best group to get us there. So I would entertain questions.
Questions of staff? Thank you, Mr. Stack.
Thank you.
Any public comment on this item? Seeing none, it comes back to the commission for further discussion and action.
I move we authorize the mayor to sign the attached agreement with H.W. Lochner, is that how you say it? Incorporated of Salina to perform design services related to interconnecting and adjusting timings for traffic signals along the 9th Street corridor.
Second?
We have a motion and a second allowing for the mayor to sign the contract to coordinate the project as stated with H.W. Lochner in an amount not to exceed $15,736.22. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Item 8.3, resolution number 126907, authorizing a farm lease agreements with Alvin Ferris.
Mr. Frazier.
Mayor and Commissioners, since 2006, the city has contracted for farm lease agreements as a result of excess land related to the construction of a railroad spur for the North Ohio Overpass project. Currently, tracks 1 through 3 are leased to Mr. Al Ferris for an annual amount of $3,680. Track 4 is leased to Eastridge Development Incorporated for an annual amount of $7,033. On June 1st, 2012, city staff opened quotations for 2 new 3-year lease agreements from August 1st, 2012 through July 31st, 2015. The results of those are as follows. For tracks 1 through 3, a 3-year bid, Al Ferris bid $12,470. Eastridge Development Incorporated bid $12,382.20. Roger Madison bid $10,003. Dennis DeBold did not submit a bid. Now for track 4, which was also a 3-year agreement, Al Ferris bid $22,000. Eastridge Development Incorporated bid $21,294.68. Roger Madison bid $18,910, and Dennis DeBold did not submit a bid on that as well. Now, tracks 1 through 3 will yield $12,470 over the 3-year agreement, or $4,156.60 per year. Track 4 is going to yield $22,000 over the 3-year agreement, or $7,333.33 per year. Staff has identified the following options and recommends option 1. Option 1 is to authorize resolution number 126907, authorizing the city manager to execute 3-year farm lease agreements with Al Ferris for North Marymount Road tracks 1 through 3 in the amount of $12,470 and track 4 in the amount of $22,000. Option 2 is do not authorize the attached agreements and to give staff further direction. Be happy to answer any of your questions.
Questions of staff? Thank you. Any public comment on this matter? Bring it back to the commission for discussion and action.
Mayor, I move that the commission authorize Resolution 12-6907, authorizing the city manager to execute 3-year farm lease agreements with Alvin Ferris for North Marymount Road tracks 1 through 3 in the amount of $12,470 and for track 4 in the amount of $22,000.
Second?
A motion and a second to approve resolution number 12-6907, authorizing city manager to execute the 3-year farm lease as noted. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Item 8.4, award of contract for the 2012 street markings, project number 122914.
Mr. Stack.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is our annual street marking project. About 108,000 feet or 11 miles of city streets are in this for this year, for 2012. In the past, we've done some of this in-house. We've contracted out. We have tried to as we talked about today in the study session, maintain our major arterials and collectors to certain standards. So we actually have reduced this from, our last contract was $30-some thousand for 2010 and 2011. So we've been able to, with our maintenance program, mills and inlays and microsurface things, we've reduced it some. However, we still have a need on some of our main arterials and collectors that we haven't gotten to yet, that our paint markings are fading. So we solicited bids and got bids from 4 companies, all of who've worked here before at some point in the past and are reputable firms. Let's see. We did have $15,000 allocated in the gas tax funds for this, so this is more than we had budgeted for. In the past, we've just painted streets. We just use paint, then it lasts about 6 months, and then it fades, and then we apply it again. We're going to try on this project on our concrete road, which in this case is Ninth Street, a portion of Ninth Street, that we're going to use a multi-component paint that's more expensive. But if we get 4 to 5 years out of it, it's paid for itself. So that's the hope. That typically works pretty well on our concrete roads. The more concrete roads we have, the more multi-component we're using. KDOT gets that for quite a bit less, it seems like, than cities do. And so our unit costs weren't very good originally, because we use unit costs from KDOT as a guide, but for Salina we don't get that kind of rate. So anyway, our budget was low when we did it last fall. Let's see, we did have a mild winter, so that helped reduce our applications in 2012. We're just going to do 1 application this year. It didn't fade near as bad this last winter. We've sometimes had to do up to 2 a year. And then I guess that's the main highlights of this. Let's see, so I'll entertain questions, I guess. We recommend, I guess, option 1 with a little bit of contingency to cover any overruns or any things that we find that we need to use a little more for.
Questions of staff?
Was Sillison and Son going to use like
Gold.
smaller paintbrushes?
Gold.
Yeah, or gold, or what was did they not understand the bid, or is that seems odd that we normally don't see that big of a spread?
Pretty big.
That's a good question. We didn't ask them. We had 3 that were pretty close.
Yeah,
so
that's why they just seemed like they were like,
they missed the boat or
Yeah.
doubled something on accident. Maybe, I don't know. Sometimes the calculators don't work for those guys. Sometimes.
yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Stack.
Thank you.
Any public comment on this? Bring it to the commission for action.
I move we approve or awarding of the contract for 2012 street markings, project number 12, 2914.
Second.
I'm sorry, I should have said to highway signing. Correct? Omaha?
To specify the contingency or not a contingency.
Using staff recommendation
Option
1.
1, is that all right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I.
Thanks.
We have a motion and a second to award contract for the 2012 street marking, project number 12-2914, to Highway Signs, Inc. in the amount of $23,044.36, plus a 5% construction contingency. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Have any other items?
I move to recess into executive session for 15 minutes to discuss with legal counsel matters subject to attorney-client privilege for the reason that public discussion of those matters would waive the privilege and adversely affect the city's interests in the matters, and reconvene at 5:10 p.m.
Second.
Motion and a second to move into executive session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Do we expect any action?
No, we do not.
We are now in executive session.